Welcome or welcome back. This is week 19. I am out of breath. I think my camera's lopsided. I didn't even get a chance to. Admittedly, I was scrambling, setting things up because I was watching the Senegal game football, and I used to be a football addict. World Cup has been sucking me back into things, but clearly that was a waste of my time. I should have been paying more attention to this. So let me get this back on track. Don't mind the slightly lopsided camera. I don't want to move and fix it now, but we'll get through. We've been through worse. I also was just scrambling to even send out this link, so I really don't know if I'll be talking to myself on live tonight, but you know what? I see some people there. Good night to y'all. Anyway, tonight's episode, as you can see on the screen, as usual, is about investing and funding options in the Caribbean, what you need to know before you jump in. And this is a much needed redo because in week 3, I covered these topics, but the audio was really terrible because a lot of wind was blowing in the phone and the mic, and I'm trying to not repeat that part, but the usual in here could get a little heated, so I'm trying to balance wind flow so I don't die and the mic. Okay, so you can still go back and watch week 3 because a lot of important stuff was covered in there that's still useful, even though the audio wasn't the best, and I won't be able to repeat every single thing. It's live, and tonight's resources as well as the week 3 resources are still available in the live income lab Q&A resources hub that you can access from the Wealth Circle community. All the links, as usual, are in the description below this video. And an upfront disclaimer is that I am not a lawyer, a licensed professional, like financial advisor, CPA, accountant. What are some other things? A broker or investment professional or anything like that. This is educational information based on my experience, knowledge, know-how, and all of that, practical knowledge, and also my research. So don't take any snippet from this live and go and say that I told you to sign up for any platform blindly and make any major money decisions with it. If you're dealing with serious investments, financial accounts, foreign accounts, business structures, taxes, or anything like that, especially things that could affect your financial standing and future, I always encourage people still do your own research. I don't set up any of these accounts for people. It's not one of the services I provide. So trust me when I say I am just giving you the information because I know very well, I've seen it time and time again, where people in the Caribbean just don't know their options. You're not aware. You don't know what you don't know. So part of this whole thing where I've been doing these weekly sessions is about getting the information from in my head because I've been through it all and more than you can imagine out to the masses. So also remember to check with, I hope it's not somebody telling me like they can't hear me or something. People always message on WhatsApp, when I'm doing these. Okay, anyway. Right, I was saying to check with your relevant financial institution and authority, like the Central Bank in Barbados, BRA. I'm sure your country probably has an equivalent, or the tax authority or qualified professional if you are interested in going down these investment routes. The funding is a little different, but same. Just check with the relevant professionals if you're going to do it, because I do not encourage what I don't do, and that is follow any human or AI tool blindly. Understand this is for you to understand and know about the options, but you still have to check the risks and make informed decisions. So just again, those disclaimers out of the way. Okay, so the Caribbean money reality now. A lot of money and investing advice online assumes that you are a US citizen or based in the US, Canada, UK, or other international markets, the large markets like those ones, where it's easy to download an app or, just click a couple buttons, get access to investment options via a platform. And that's it. I'm sure you've heard of things like Robinhood and those kind of platforms. Also, they assume that you can do all these things easily from those kind of markets and countries, like opening a brokerage account, connecting a bank, buying stocks, investing in funds, or accessing startup capital. But that is not our reality in the Caribbean. I have lived it enough in my years to say for a fact. So growing up, you see movies like Wolf of Wall Street. I sure did. And even before that came out, I'm talking long before, you would see something on TV about, the stock market in the US and you get excited, right? You think, surely, surely there's a local equivalent, like, or you can invest in that, or there's, as I said, a local equivalent. So I know I did my research for the stock market in Barbados, and boy, did my bubble burst quick fast. Because you think you're gonna be, doing like those people over there, just trading, making, building wealth and making big money moves and all of that. It looks really exciting, and you start looking into the local options like I did, and you find the Barbados Stock Exchange (BSE), and realize it is a completely different ball game. Like I said, that bubble pop moment, and you're not looking of companies like the US stock exchange where you can just buy and trade stocks and sell and all that. The local stock exchange in Barbados, for example, has about 16 companies or 20 or something like that, that you can even potentially invest in with. And then a couple options like stocks and shares and whatever else. But if you compare that to a major US exchange where there are like over 3,000 listed companies, and that's data from say up to the end of 2025. It's well over 3,000. So, and that's just one stock exchange. So it's, do the math, do the numbers. You can't compare potential earnings dollar for dollar when you're a dot of a country like Barbados. And I keep saying I love my country. I've always been very patriotic, but facts are facts. You cannot compare potentially investing and getting returns from about that handful of companies, like 16, as I said, versus I see this mic thing going up. Anyway, versus thousands in the US and other global markets. So that is a huge difference. And locally, you typically don't have the same direct retail investor experience anyway, like people in the US, where like I said, you can open those apps and just get started on your own. To buy or sell shares on the Barbados Stock Exchange, for example, you have to go through a registered broker. And same way how there's only a handful of companies to even then on the stock exchange, there's less registered brokers, like four. Don't take my word for it though. I haven't checked back recently, but I just remember years ago it was like five of them you could even use that were still active or whatever. You had to go to places like I think Guardian or Fortress. I don't quote me on those parts. I never looked back because I looked into international options and saw way better. I'm not bashing Barbados, do your thing, but just saying. But anyway, we have a handful of brokers, not like in the US again, where there are many, many more than that number. And we do not have dozens and dozens of platforms that you can go and use on your own, like in the US and other countries. So it doesn't make the local market useless. It just means you have to understand the reality you're operating in. And fewer options don't mean no options. I certainly found some here, and we'll get into those later. But the real problem for many people is not just about money; it's more about information and awareness, I would say. So if you don't know what exists, you can't use it. So if you don't know what to ask, you can't compare things properly. If you don't know what to look for, all of that, which is where we're going to get into the meat of the matter next. And if you only blindly copy advice made for another market, you're probably going to lose out because none of it, like I said, accounts for our Caribbean reality, which it can be vastly different, trust me. And you may end up just frustrated or exposed. So I always say you don't know what you don't know, but you also don't want to be paying the idiot tax, as they call it, for not knowing. Again, that's why I'm doing episodes just like this. So, as usual, if you have any questions that pop up at any point, feel free to ask. Message me on any social platform you can find me on, really. Okay, so financial vehicles are tools. This is a subheading input just to remind myself of the topics I wanted to cover. So I look at everything as a tool, a job, a business, AI, savings, investing, brokerage accounts, grants, loans, endowment funds, funding programs. I look at everything as a tool. And the thing about it is it's not about any one thing being good or bad or whatever, but you have to look at what fits your situation. And you're not limited to only choosing one of these vehicles when you're ready to do investments or funding or anything. You have to more look at what is the right fit for you. In comparison to if you have money tied up in like an endowment fund, you can't just walk in, like you go to your local ATM and withdraw money any time of day or night. That comes with its limitations. It's not very liquid cash that you can go and access anytime you want. So as I said, local savings or checkings account has its place or whatever. Liquid cash, emergencies, they're great for that. But if your money is just sitting there for years while inflation is eating away at it, chomping away like Pac-Man. I don't know why Pac-Man came in my head. That's such an old reference. Anyway, I like nostalgia. I like those old games. Anyhow, if the inflation is just eating away at your money, by the time you are ready for said money that you thought would be amassing interest and getting you the big bucks, I'm sure you'd be in for a surprise. Because if you don't understand the surrender terms of things like, say, um, insurance plans and endowment plans and all those things, and things like the payout realities, same inflation, taxes, all of that. That money that you put in an endowment fund or an insurance plan can look very different. Similarly, back to the savings, the money you had sitting there that you thought would be amassing interest and getting you income, no, probably not. Like every quarter, I send my parents as a joke screenshot of my bank, one of my local bank accounts, where I get a whopping like 5% interest. I'm like big spender. But that is the reality here. So anyway, investing can be useful for growth, of course, versus savings accounts that are just kind of sitting there. Even though over the years they created better options like high yield savings accounts that tend to pay out more per your dollars. And business funding now that can help you grow, but okay, debt, investors, grants, everything come with their own conditions. So as I said before, every financial vehicle is a tool. The power comes from understanding how each tool actually works. So the investment options to understand. Now we're getting into the meat of the matter. We're going to cover 5 investment or categories, as I call them. So first, you have local investments, local savings and traditional bank products. So we're talking savings accounts, high yield savings accounts, as I just mentioned, and products like treasury bills, bonds. So these things might feel safe and familiar. I get it. Growing up, a lot of our parents would have told us, okay, save your money. And they were also doing the best they could with the information they had. But I think it's each person's responsibility to do a little bit better. So now you are learning about better or faster savings and money options, call it that. So it's not like savings accounts, like I said, are useless. They do have a place, but these other investment vehicles also can have a place. But anyway, as I said, these tend to feel safe and familiar because we all grew up hearing about them. They're commonplace, and familiar normally feels, well, normal, regular. And the unknown can feel scary, but trust me, when you any of these things down, it's just about awareness and information. And once you have it, you can get just as comfortable as you feel about a regular savings account that you're going to open in any bank here. So they have their place, as I said. A checking account can be good for liquid cash and all of that and emergencies. But the problem is, as I said, savings accounts don't grow money the way the other lanes can. So if inflation is rising faster than the money in the account, the money is just sitting there earning little to nothing, then the buying power is continuously shrinking. Every quarter, as I said, send my parents that screenshot with the whopping 5 cents earnings on my money on one of my local savings accounts that I honestly use for a lot of liquid cash. So it's not like it's a surprise. I'm not saying that bank is, let me not go down that road. I have a problem with every bank here. Anyway, second lane is insurance and endowment style plans. So these can have a place also, but people need to understand the details. So don't only look at a future lump sum, because when the insurance agents are doing their job, to be fair, they're selling insurance. When they're doing their thing and promoting these plans, they tell you about, okay, you can get a lump sum of $100,000, $200,000 in just 20 years. That seems very attractive to many people when you just have to put in $100 to $200 a month, right? However, you have to then ask yourself things like, okay, well, what is inflation going to look like in that same 20 years? What will that same lump sum of 100,000 or $200,000 look like in 20 years? What will the buying power be like? So let's say today, 2026, we're in what, July? July 1st. Okay, wow, the year is flying. Let's say today you're able to buy a plot of land with $100,000. That does not mean guaranteed in the future you can buy that same size plot of land for $100,000. That's what the kind of stuff I'm talking about when I'm talking about inflation. You might be able to not buy that, just, yeah, throwing in a random example, but thing you have to think about when it comes to inflation and these seemingly attractive plans. You also have to ask yourself questions like, okay, what fees apply, if any? What happens if you stop paying? Because not all of these insurance plans offer your money back in any form or fashion if you stop paying early. So let's say you spent a year, 5 years, 10 years even paying it, and one day you can't pay it. Typically, your money that you would have been putting in month after month for whatever period is burnt if you don't pay the full 20-year term or however long you were supposed to be paying it. So those are the kind of things you have to think about. Again, it's not to say these things can't work. And traditionally, insurance plans and other types of endowment and similar plans have been used by the wealthy to build wealth. So there has to be something there, where there's fire, there's smoke. So they can be used, but just know your options. Now, um, okay, the third option, local or regional investment options. So Carry Land is one example I have given before because I personally used it both as a borrower and as a lender. And I can tell you, you would rather be on the lender end for anything that you're doing. To this day, I wish I didn't borrow certain sums of money that I borrowed in the past. If you know when you know better, do better. But I also don't live life with regrets because here I am able to tell you. So I'm not affiliated with them, by the way, and I don't earn anything, get anything from anybody when I do these sessions. This is just me sharing my knowledge and experience, as I said. So I mentioned them because it's one example of a more accessible peer-to-peer lending vehicle where oh, and they're available. I think they started in Barbados, but they're now also available in Trinidad and Jamaica, I believe. But do your research. You can go on their website. What was I saying about peer-to-peer? Okay, so peer-to-peer lending, it basically means individuals, meaning the lenders, can lend money through a platform, in this case, Carry Lend, and borrowers can apply for loans, and the people at the Carry Lend end doing their admin thing or accounting would allot the lender's money to different people. So it can be relatively safe in the sense of they don't go and, let's say I invest $1,000 as a lender. They wouldn't just give my $1,000 necessarily to just one borrower, because let's say if that borrower defaults on payments, as in doesn't, hoping it's not playing here. Let's say the lender doesn't pay back or can't pay back for whatever reason at any point. My $1,000 would be burnt, right? Or some portion of that, as opposed to if the peer-to-peer lending is spread around and say 50 of my dollars went to that person, 50 from another person, 100 from another person to make up whatever sum that person was the borrower was getting in a loan. I hope I said that clear enough. If y'all have any questions, message me. But it does tend to then carry a little less risk than if you were lending somebody a lump sum, So, but like anything else, it still carries risk, just so we're clear. And they always have a quick turnaround with anything. They're very responsive. I'm always unbiased. Trust me, if they were terrible, I would let you know. You don't have to look far for that in terms of poor customer service in the Caribbean. Anyway, fourth, local stock markets like Barbados Stock Exchange. I mentioned them earlier in this episode. Let me just check over at the live. Okay, great. So this is where the Wolf of Wall Street example meets the Barbados and Caribbean reality. So as I mentioned earlier, the Barbados market is way smaller, and any other Caribbean market would be way smaller. And on the Bajan one, there's only a couple companies and a couple registered brokers you have to go through anyway. That means it is not the same as opening like a Robinhood style account overseas. a Robinhood style app and scrolling through hundreds or thousands of options and just clicking and buying and selling. You cannot do that just like that here. Um, so the examples of registered broker type institutions you can research here include First Citizens, their investment services. Side note, a lot of Caribbean countries have some of the same financial institutions. So yes, I'm more listing stuff for Barbados, but this should, if you're in another island, this can at least spark your curiosity, so you can check for the equivalents there or whatever relevant places. So Capital, there's RF Capital Markets, Sagicor Asset Management, Signia Globe, NCB Capital Markets. So NCB is like a Jamaican bank. I should really look into the bank account I had there when I was studying at Mona in Jamaica. But just a word to the wise though, a lot of these local options or institutions tend to prefer, or I don't want to misrepresent them, but they tend to more so be about dealing with people who already have the big bucks. So we're talking $100,000 and up. And most of us don't have that just laying around, in our bank account. So, just saying, it doesn't mean they have zero options for you. Still ask them a question. Anyway, fifth, international investment platforms. And this is my preferred lane by far, I can tell you. Anyway, so Interactive Brokers is one of the few remaining options for the Caribbean. Well, yes, few remaining options that Caribbean people can still gain access to. Let me say that better. One of the few remaining options that Caribbean people can still use to gain access to international markets. Yes. Okay. So, um, it can give access to things like stocks, um, bonds, ETFs, meaning exchange traded funds, and other investment products, depending on eligibility and country support. Sometimes when I pause, it's because when I do these lives, just regular everyday life, so many things are running through my head, and I have to try my very best to keep myself on track. Try not to embarrass my family, especially my parents. I don't mind embarrassing my brother; he's embarrassed me enough, but I have to try to keep a lot of things in mind when I'm doing these lives. I can tell you it's not easy. Man, my brain is always all over the place. If I hear a car pass outside or something, I'm like, typical malicious Bajan too. Anyway, so an ETF, or an exchange traded fund, as I just mentioned, is basically a basket of investments that trades on an exchange. So the same way how I mentioned the US stock exchanges like that. So instead of buying one, man, is this? I hope this is not crackling. I would hate to know the audio went bad for a second time in the investment and funding episode. That would not, it would not be funny. Anyway, um, right. So instead of buying just one stock, let's say you were to buy a stock in just Apple, an ETF would be a collection of stocks, if you will. So it could contain stocks from, say, Apple, Amazon, Google, other professionals put together these stocks, these ETFs. Sorry. So they're already seen as less risky, because let's say if something in one of those companies dips, you don't have your money invested in just that stock. You have a collection of stocks, so it is less impacted directly if something happens. Hope I said that clear enough for you. If you have any questions, again, just ask. um okay, for letting me know the audio is clear. Why y'all always so late though? It's like 7:24. I hope y'all go back and watch the recaps from the top. Anyway, thank you nevertheless. So, well, what was I saying? Right. So that can help with diversification, because there are many different ETFs that exist out there. And let's say you go to a good advisor and tell them what you're looking for. That, hey, I want to invest in XYZ companies. You don't, as I said, have to do the higher risk method necessarily of buying stocks from just one company. You can get the benefit of both worlds, basically. Anyway, they're not risk free, just like there's nothing that's risk free. But many people, as I said, use them because they can spread the risk more than just buying an individual stock. And this is where I speak from experience, because For example, I have seen a starting investment of around 10,000, let's say 5,000 BBD. Oh gosh, 5,000 USD. So 10,000 Barbados dollars grow by about 2,000 USD. So 5,000 USD, 2,000 USD in less than 2 years on the US stock market. And I can tell you, if I had, say, put that same amount of money in any local options, it's highly unlikely that that would have been the growth in that time period. Just saying. So that kind of return is not something people are used to seeing from basic savings options here. If you had that same 5,000 USD on a local account, call it 10,000 BVD on a local account, ain't no way in less than 2 years you're seeing 4,000 profit. You understand? So I'm just saying you have options. And an important note for you to remember is that you don't have to use one money vehicle. You can use multiple, you could use two, you could use all, say, insurance plans, overseas investments accounts, a business, a high yield savings account. You have options and you can use more than one. That's the beauty of modern day. So, in terms of banking and international access, these last few episodes, I've really been running out of time, huh? Anyway, so banking and international access, this is separate but a related point. So sometimes people are not only looking for investments, they're looking for access. So access to US markets, brokerage accounts, USD, international payments, international receiving options are a practical way to fund investment accounts, whether locally or internationally, but more so the international ones is what people use these for. So you can look into things like Charles Schwab's account. I'm going to run through things because we're pressed for time, but Charles Schwab, I can never get it said. Charles Schwab International is one of the few major options that international applicants, including from the Caribbean, are still, let's say, may still be able to access, because they say you're able to access it, but whenever you check, they always say like not available right now, but you can still check real time. I won't give much details on that because I have all these resources listed in the notes for the session. So don't forget, you can access that from the community, the Live Income Lab Q&A resources tab. Then you have fintech banks like Wise and Payoneer. I've mentioned these before in some episodes. So they're not traditional bank accounts, but they can be used as such in some instances, or they can be useful in your setup, whether that's business or personal. A freelancer might use Payoneer to get payouts from a platform or an affiliate program, or even from customers. A lot of them allow invoicing, even things like that. Some people might use Wise to receive payments or transfer funds from an international account to a local one, or vice versa. And you can use it to hold certain currencies, so not just USD, so we're clear. You can use it to pay suppliers and do other things internationally, but these things don't automatically replace a full bank if you're looking for full banking options, like what would allow you to have a debit or credit card or whatever. Some of them do, but some of them still hold back some of those features only for the big name countries like the same US, UK, Canada, yada yada. Then you have business banking platforms such as Mercury or Relay. These are just some. These are usually more relevant when someone has a US business structure, so like an LLC. Man, I could see the mic thing go. Anyway, like a US LLC, but don't assume getting LLC is the whole story. Some platforms require proper documentation, eligibility review. Some require quite a lot of documents. Some are more standard, like passport, business documents, different things, and some actually require existing or planned U.S. operations, and some even within a certain time frame. So if you don't plan to have U.S. operations, for example, you probably don't want these methods. For Barbados specifically, if you're opening foreign bank accounts, are dealing with anything like to do with foreign currency, you really want to check with your the central bank or equivalent authority, and other places like, say, the BRA, Barbados Revenue Authority, or a qualified professional. Just giving these disclaimers because getting access is one thing, but understanding any requirements or additional legalities and all that is a different ballgame. So funding options. Now, I failed again. I'm at 7:30. Anyway, funding options. Funding is different from investing, of course. Investing is usually about putting money into something and letting it work for growth, while funding is about getting money into a business, project, or opportunity. So I have 6 funding lanes to understand. I'll try to just run through them. First is a very underrated one that I find is one of the most underrated ones. I don't even hear really talked about as a funding option, but it proves demand while bringing money into business immediately. And many people don't think of this when it comes to funding a business, but it works. And that is customer funding growth. So pre-sales, deposits, pre-orders, early bird offers, paid pilots, retainers, and selling a smaller version of the bigger product you plan to launch, the full version. Like these things, so, start thinking of them as a funding option where that is one, the beauty of it, you don't have to get money from anyone else upfront, meaning a bank or another lending institution. You can get the customers themselves to fund stuff if you're in that kind of business. Anyway, the second lane is loans and microloans. So in Barbados, some examples to research include government and non-government financing for small businesses. So available from places like the Barbados Trust Fund Limited. There's also Fund Access and the Barbados Youth Business Trust. My gosh, next week is the final week for a while. Thank God. I'm clearly not doing great. Anyway, so you have to check eligibility, like any age requirements, amounts, interest rates, all that kind of stuff. And whether the program is currently open. Step one, I don't even mean to sound dangerous, but you also have to get through to some of these places first. Because again, I've lived it all. And even when you do get through, sometimes you don't hear back again. They might tell you, fill out this form or send an email. Good luck. Third, you have grants, but remember some grants are actually reimbursement style where you might have to spend the money first and get reimbursed later. Just a side note, I don't hear many people mentioning, but that's an important distinction, whether they require you to have upfront cash or not. But anyway, still, as usual, check to see if it's currently open, and whether your business is eligible, of course, all of that. So Caribbean Exports Direct Assistance Grant. Yes. Scheme is one example you can research for export-oriented businesses. And there are other grant programs, but I can't list all. I have more stuff listed in the resources, as I said. So fourth is angel investors or investor networks. So examples you can research include the Caribbean Business Angel Network, also called CBAN. There's First Angels Caribbean and the Caribbean Investment Network, but they're online as I have it in the resources. Don't hate me. I can't remember the name right now, but it's very close to their name. Anyway, so these are not the same as grants. Typically, angel investors tend to be people who came into wealth one way or another. They tend to be older people that just want to put their money to work, or sometimes it's less about money for them actually and more about investing in a person, like being a mentor and all that. They're different combinations. Some are more hands off. They don't want to mentor anybody. They just want to put their money to work in startup businesses, projects, people, whatever. And, but angel investment is an option. Then you have things like, there's the fifth lane. So you have things like competitions, accelerators, and incubators. So these are not quite direct funding routes, but they can work because some accelerators, many of them have cap money payouts. So first prize for whatever competition might be $100,000, $10,000, varying amounts. Typically, you don't have to pay it back, but sometimes they have other requirements, like they want to see you're working 6 months or whatever. Grants have some of those requirements too. Anyway, the sixth and final lane is partnerships and affiliate or referral models. So sometimes you don't need a grant or investor first. Sometimes just a partner or a referral arrangement, an affiliate model, or a collaboration that gets money moving with little or no upfront capital. So this can also include peer funding sources, example from your friends or family. Investing in your business. Now, even though we're already over time, I wanted to include an important note about AI first research and workflows and scam warnings. Now, I hope the live doesn't get cut, but even so, it's over the 30-minute mark. So we kind of made it. So this, though, is where AI can help you if you use it properly. So I personally use AI more like a research assistant and not something I blindly follow as a financial advisor. And I do not suggest anyone does any blind following of any AI tool or any human even. I think you still need to do your due diligence and research. So we're clear. That's what I do. So you can use AI to explain terms that you're unfamiliar with, like the same ETFs, bonds. You can use it to compare, okay, compare savings accounts to insurance plans or stuff like that. Use it for research, use it to help you learn and go further faster. You know, it can help you summarize complex terms and conditions that you might see on one of these platforms. So, you know, sometimes they drown all the information in pages and pages and tons of words. You can plug a link or save the page as a PDF or something and plug it into on one of these AIs like same Chat GPT, Claude, Perplexity AI. Again, you can use these things for free even and just ask it to, hey, are there any, you know, sneaky things in these terms and conditions I should be aware of? Or can you summarize these terms and conditions for me? Things like that you can ask them to do. Hope doing this is okay. So a useful, but AI can still hallucinate and make mistakes. So we're clear. So even if you use that as a tool, just like if you use a person, you still have to do your own due diligence. So a useful prompt could be explain the difference between savings, insurance, peer-to-peer lending, ETFs, and business funding for a beginner in the Caribbean. Do not give personal financial advice. Give me questions I should ask before choosing an option. That's a simple prompt you can put in. And I also included the prompt in the show notes if you want to use it. So also be careful of trends, any hyped up stuff and scams. So this includes things like, you know, when they had all the blessing circle hype in the Caribbean, not just Barbados, it's like rampant in the Caribbean. Technically, can those things work? Sure. But anything that is built like a pyramid scheme is bound to collapse because human nature, people get selfish, people get their lump sums and they're like, I'm not putting back anything in this. You mad? I gone. So they tend to collapse. And you want to be mindful of anything like that, anything that promises quick returns. And, you know, generally, if the promise is a guarantee, if it's urgent, if there's a lot of secrecy, or only works if you recruit more people, slow down and do your research, ask around, even go to the authorities and ask some questions because you don't want to get caught. Like I said, paying the idiot tax. Yes, definitely facts. Just saw the comments there. Okay, so the personal tidbit, I guess I'll still put it in. My favorite genre of movies has always been horrors from the time I was a little girl. I probably had problems. I don't know. I would wait till it was late night, turn off all the lights in the house. I would wait till, yes, everybody was sleeping, one after the other, sneak down, go and turn off all the lights, then put on a horror to give myself the best chance of being scared. Why? I don't know. Don't blame my parents though. Trust me, it's not their fault. I probably just always had issues. And I still love horrors to this day. I rarely come across any that actually scare me. Again, I might just have issues. My mom can't even watch them. But anyway, in closing, tonight, wait, I saw another comment. Yeah, he said, run hard from pyramid schemes or blessing circles. Well, yes, I'm sure a lot of people have learned their lessons. Anyway, in closing tonight, we covered the Caribbean money reality, financial vehicles as tools, local and international investing options, banking and international access considerations, funding lanes, and how AI can help you research without replacing your judgment and common sense and critical thinking. Yes. So the final thing before we wrap up, as usual, you can join the Wealth Circle community for resources from this and all of the other sessions. And you can subscribe, of course, if you haven't. You can hit like on it, all of that. Uh, it's live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. AST, Atlantic Standard Time. But bear in mind that next week is the final week for, I don't know when it will be back, but I think in these weeks, I really did what I set out to do, which was cover a lot of information about a lot of pressing topics that I know people weren't aware of. And that was cemented and reaffirmed when every single week someone would message and say, I never heard about this or that. So thank you for tuning in on the support, honestly. And your energy does keep me going, but I am also tired. So next week is the final week and I keep getting excited when I think about it. And I guess to wrap up, you know, money grows when you understand the tools, allocate wisely, verify the information, and stay consistent. And remember, fewer options doesn't mean no options. So that's me for tonight. If you have any questions, as usual, I always say you can catch me on any of my socials. And we went well over time.